Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Hallman, and I am the Contract and Compliance Manager here at the Early Learning Coalition of Polk County. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy days to go over the expectations for the 2023-2024 School Readiness Program, as well as the Voluntary Pre-Kindergarten Program. In the very beginning, we're going to talk about school readiness, followed by VPK. All right, so as we begin the school readiness program year, there are some expectations for the contracting for the 2023-2024 program year. You should have a checklist, and this checklist provides beneficial information of what is required within your provider profile. Each provider has to have their very own profile, and what the profile does is allows contracts that are electronically held in our statewide system to be viewed or amended as needed. All the documents within your profile is listed that is required within your profile on this checklist, and you should have a copy of that as well. For school readiness services, know that we pay up to 12 holidays, which are observed. There's 13 to select from, but we do pay for 12. And you can see these 12 here. And these were what would be added to your profile. And these days are what transfer over to your contract. Now, not all of these days will transfer on their own. So when you get ready to work on your contract that's in the statewide system, you may have to add some of these days in to the exhibit portion of your contract. This is going to give you step-by-step directions how to create a profile, but by now at this point, most of you should be at that point. But should you need assistance or should you need something to refer to, this checklist will provide you beneficial information on how to go through your profile. And you can see right here, you would have your own account. You're going to go to profile, which will take you to the main dashboard. And then within that areas where you're going to put your business information in. And this is how you would create from year to year based off of the profile, your profile for each program year. And know that every year you are responsible for creating your profile once they become available. Okay, we are going to move down to, and you will have a copy of this, so I'm not going to go into great detail on this section. There's also information on how to submit payment within your packet that you will receive. Okay, we're going to just keep moving through. Till we get to the contract section. And as you know, the health department provides screening and vision services to each of the children. So make sure when you have your profiles and your contracts ready, when the health department reaches out to you, make sure that you are available, that you have the forms completed correctly for when they come out and do the screenings of the children. Okay, now we're going to roll into the contract. So every year you have a school readiness contract, and just know every year you are required to attend an orientation to go over the expectations of the school readiness and or voluntary pre-kindergarten program contracts. So we're going to go through this information, and then we'll go through key points. We're not going to go through everything word for word, but we are definitely going to go over pertinent information that pertains to you. And you will have a copy of this contract in your portal. And you can also access a draft version through the Division of Early Learning's website. And it is beneficial, and it would behoove you to really get to know this contract inside and out, because this is the expectations of the contract. So the purpose of the contract, what is the purpose of the contract? Well, the purpose of this contract, right, is designed to inform you as the early childhood educator, AKA known as the provider of the requirements of participating in the school readiness program. So when we talk about payment limitations, right, in here, before the contract is fully executed by both parties, you need to make sure that you have a contract, because you will not be entitled to payment until you have a contract that has been certified. Under item number 6, when we talk about non-transferable, know that this contract is not transferable or assignable to any entity, right? If there's a change in ownership, that's going to require, or if you're moving, an execution of a new contract. That contract is tied to the owner and it is tied to that location. So if there's a change in ownership, or if you are moving, you need to let us know within 30 days in advance, because what we do not want to do is disrupt services for families. So we try to have as little disruption as possible. So again, you were required to give us at least a 30 days notice. When we talk about provider type, as a provider, you're going to fall under one of these categories. Okay, we're going to keep going through. So under this section B of eligibility, so as an owner, officer, or board director or thereof, you cannot be found guilty of fraud within the last 5 years. We talk about section C. That is the same thing for the USDA disqualified list, which is the State Department of Agricultural National Disqualified List. You cannot be found guilty of fraud. When we talk about section D, and this talks about a quality improvement plan. So some of you could be on a quality improvement plan, and just know that it can go from one contract year into the next one, which could go into from 1 year to the next, but know that you are held accountable to complete the terms of that quality improvement plan should you be on one, and failure to successfully complete the requirements of your QIP could be grounds for termination. So we talk about section E here. Under this section, in order to contract as a contracted provider with the Early Learning Coalition of Polk County, just know that you have to have a pre-contractual inspection conducted by either DCF or by the local licensing agency. So that is a requirement, and you have to ensure that you have compliance with health and safety standards. Under section F, every provider that is contracted with us will at some point roll into having a class observation once you have a certain number of school readiness children. And know that in order to contract with us, there is a minimum threshold that you have to achieve, which currently for this contract year is at a 4.0 or higher. And that is used with an observational tool called CLASS, which is the Classroom Assessment Scoring System. And that is through teacher-child interactions. Okay. Under section G, each provider is required, whether you're a family child care home or you are a facility, you are required to have and register with E-Verify. And so basically what the E-Verify does is it attests that you do not and are not subcontracting with an unauthorized alien. We do not do contracted flats, so you do not have to worry about that section. We talk about provider responsibilities and scope of work. So again, make sure that you are watching your attendance, but under this section, you as the provider agree to enroll eligible children for your school readiness program with authorization from the coalition, which will be provided in a form of a child care certificate from the single statewide information system. And also know that under this, that you as the provider will not be reimbursed for services provided to a child beyond the services begin and the services end date as identified. Under section 10, under this section, you agree to provide childcare and to supervise children that are enrolled in your program. Under section 12 of the general health and safety, under this section, you are agreeing to provide a healthy and safe environment for children within your facility. Under supervision, this is agreeing to maintain that minimum child to staff ratio. So under these sections, and as well as background screening. So under your background screening, you would agree to have background screening conducted for all of the personnel, volunteers, and substitutes within your program. Now, under the supervision and background screening, just know that we have been seeing an increase in DCF violations. So please make sure that you are maintaining your staff to child ratio. We know that it gets hard out there, especially with a shortage in teachers, but that is critical. Same thing with the background screenings. Make sure that when you have staff in your program that are working with children, that they are properly and have followed the guidelines of the background screening rules as it pertains to what's in statute. Okay. Moving on, when we talk about the quality improvement plan, again, this talks a little bit about you agreeing if you are on a quality improvement plan to fulfill those requirements. And you are required to complete a quality improvement plan should you be placed on one. Smoke-free environment. That means that you will not obviously have individuals on premises that are smoking near the facility or indoor the facility, and that there could be a fine. Curriculum, that you will carry state approved curriculum as well as character development. Developmental screenings. You will be screening children every year for children will be screened, and this is just the rule through the developmental screenings that under there that there's the collaboration with the coalition to complete a screening for each child that's age 6 weeks to 60 months within 45 calendar days after the child's first or subsequent enrollment in the school readiness program. Melinda does handle these, and just know that if the screenings, I'm sure some of you have gotten the alerts, just make sure you're staying up on your ASQ screenings because you will receive alerts and you want to stay in compliance with this. Also, the responsibility for conducting the developmental screening for each child 6 weeks to 60 months. Again, make sure that you're staying in compliance with that and that the subsequent screenings as well. And those are conducted annually at the redetermination. Okay, moving on. Child immunizations and health screenings, making sure that you're staying up to date with that as well. Workers' compensation and reemployment and assistance. Know that up to a certain number of individuals enrolled in your program, you are required to carry workers' compensation insurance. For sign-in and out sheets, you need to maintain daily sign-in and out sheets, which has, it needs to be documented. It could be electronic version or it could be the written out, but you are required on a daily basis to have sign in and out sheets, and those sign in and out sheets need to be completed accurately. And things happen where teachers do have to periodically, and I say periodically, if a parent leaves to sign a child out, but it should not be something that's habitual. The teachers or directors should not be signing the children in and out on a daily basis. Child absences. Know that the provider agrees to notify the coalition in writing. If a child enrolled is absent for 5 consecutive days and they have no contact from the parent by the close of the 5th day. Under the Riley-Wilson Act, this is critical. Make sure that you are paying attention to this, that you agree to abide by the provisions of the Riley-Wilson Act, which is under statute, Florida statute, and it's 39.604 for each at-risk child under the age of school entry who is enrolled in the school readiness program. And I'm going to read this little section here. You should have a copy of this sent to you. If you do not have a copy of the Riley-Wilson, please reach out to the Early Learning Coalition. We'll be happy to give you the expectations that you have to abide by for the Riley-Wilson Act. And under this section, so a child enrolled in an early education or child care program who meets the requirements of the act may not be withdrawn from a program without prior written approval of the department or community-based care lead agency. If a child covered by this act is absent, the program shall report any unexcused absences or 7 excused absences to the department or community-based care lead agency by the end of the business day following the unexcused absence or the 7th consecutive excused absence. Again, it's important to follow that Riley-Wilson Act. Parental choice. Parents have the right to choose a provider care for their services for their children. Parental access. That is providing parents unlimited access and their children to the SR program during the normal business hours of operation. Single statewide information system, and that's where your provider services portal is housed. And so under this system, making sure that you are staying up to date with your profiles. Any changes that are within your profile, you're doing that in a timely manner. And making sure that you are keeping your profiles up to date. Email changes, phone number changes, director changes, any information, rate changes need to be updated to the provider services portal on your end, and it needs to be done in an efficient manner. Okay, direct deposit. So if you provide information for direct deposit, please make sure that your banking information is up to date. Should you have any changes within your banking accounts, please make sure that you reach out to your reimbursement specialist. Contracted slots, we don't do. Orientation, again, each year, every provider that is wanting to contract either for school readiness or the voluntary pre-kindergarten program must go through an orientation in order to contract. Child assessment, if applicable, that you agree to conduct a child assessment using a reliable assessor. So that would mean that you would have to meet a certain criteria to be reliable in the tool. The tool that we use is Teaching Strategies Gold. And there is a differential if you qualify, which is an additional payment that you could have if you qualify to administer this type of assessment with the children in your program. Should you want interest in that and see if you are eligible, you can reach out to Kristen Granith to receive more information on that. Okay, we're moving on. Okay, when we talk about training and technical assistance, we have wonderful coaches that are here at the Early Learning Coalition of Polk County. So make sure you're checking your emails. Make sure that you're reaching out to your coaches that are assigned for any kind of technical assistance or trainings that we have available through our coalition website that can benefit your program. Developmental and subsequent screenings, as I said, Melinda to Cantrell can provide additional information on this, and you will receive alerts if you are behind on doing your screenings. And every provider is required to make sure this is being completed every contract year and throughout the course of, again, re-enrollment of the children. Okay. Under child eligibility, Know that the coalition has a responsibility for determining the eligibility of children enrolling in an SR program. And the coalition will issue forms that make up a child care certificate, also known as the payment certificate. Under section 38, monitoring. So just know that the coalition is required to have monitorings conducted on providers every single year. So there's two types of monitorings that we do. Actually, there's three. We have a tier 1 monitoring that's completed, and 100% of the providers are monitored on their sign-in and out sheets and the accuracy of their sign-in and out sheets, as well as what's submitted for their attendance. In addition to that, we have tier 2 monitoring, and our tier 2 monitoring is monitored on the SRM form, and that is a thicker monitoring that they go through different components within your program, and there is a selected individuals that get monitored every year, and it gets rotated out. So at some point, every provider is monitored using the tier 2. And then we have internal monitoring, and that through the internal monitoring, again, are different children that are randomly selected through an auditing process to make sure that you're in compliance with meeting the terms of the sign-in and out sheets and the payment process that is held to your contract. 39, physical access, making sure that you allow physical access to DCF or the coalition. So there's no closing your blinds and peeking through the windows to see who's there or who is not, and not allowing the coalition to come or DCF into the building. We do have to come in. And some people travel, some of the coaches and some of the monitoring individuals come a long way. So please make sure that you are allowing them into the building. Same thing with record access. Make sure that you allow access when it is needed for the coalition. And that would be like sign-in and out sheets, things like that. Confidentiality, making sure that your records are kept confidential. Record maintenance under section 42. It is your responsibility to back up your documentation, to keep your records for a period of 5 years, because they can be pulled for an audit. For record transfer or termination, just know that if you permanently cease to offer the SR program before the conclusion or retention of your SR program, that you are required to turn over your records from the past 5 years to the coalition, and payment can be held until the records have been received. Compensation and funding. So we talk about methods of payment that just know under this section, under 44, provider reimbursement for eligible children will be based on the child care certificate, also known as the payment certificate. So that is how you are paid. So if your enrollments are terminated, make sure that you are doing that accordingly. If you stay in contact with your family services and your reimbursement, so that, again, payment is based off of your enrollments. Okay, under section 45, reimbursement rates. You agree to accept the approved provider reimbursement rate, which is in the exhibit of the contract, and you're paid based on budget availability. Okay. Under gold seal rate, there is an opportunity that you would get an additional differential for a gold seal rate. Now, that is not Teaching Strategies Gold. That is a accreditation. That is a gold seal accreditation. Under section 47, quality performance incentive rate, based on where you come in on your class score. Just know, based upon that, there is an opportunity to receive a incentive, a different differential based on your class composite scores. Child assessment rate. Again, there is, if you are eligible, an additional differential based off of the child assessment rates which we said was teaching strategies gold in this section, but there is certain criteria that you would have to meet in order to be eligible for this. But again, if you're interested, you can reach out to Kristen Granith for more information. So there is opportunity in different areas to have an increase in rates. Contracted slots rates, we don't do that. Special needs rate, there are special needs rate, but again, there's certain criteria that needs to be met in order to have those special needs rates. Registration fee. So under registration fee, if provider indicates a change in the registration fee, the coalition shall pay the provider registration fee for each child enrolled in the school readiness program. Okay, rate charges and limitations. Under this section, the provider must notify the coalition in writing of the changes within 14 days prior to the change. So again, if you're doing any kind of rate changes to your profile, you need to let us know in advance that you're doing that. Under section 53, rates and fees for parents, the provider acknowledges that is prohibited from charging parents receiving SR services higher rates than those charged to private pay parents. We don't do this section, so we're going to keep going. Co-payments. So you, as the provider, are required to collect assessed parent co-payments or graduated phase out co-payments. That is your responsibility. When we talked about the holiday schedule, again, you are paid for up to 12 holidays that are recognized through the coalition. Now you can close your program on different days, but they won't be payable outside of the scope of what are the coalition payable holidays. Attendance documentation, that you agree to document daily the attendance and submit your monthly attendance reports for payments. So it is critical for you to make sure that your daily sign in and out sheets are matching up with what you are submitting for attendance. Make sure that you are double checking your attendance that is being submitted, because those two things do need to match up. And when that gets looked into, there's a lot that goes further into this contract that goes over fraud. So making sure, again, sign-in out sheets and your attendance submission can be looked at as fraud. So it is critical and imperative that you double check your sign-in out sheets against your attendance. Okay, when we talk about section 58, so here, the provider agrees to report to the coalition any discrepancies, overpayment or underpayment within 60 calendar days of the reimbursement summary being available. And then when we talk about attendance documentation, again, under this section, so you need to submit all required attendance records to the coalition on or before the 3rd business day of each month. If the due date falls on a holiday, that you agree to submit all required attendance records on the preceding business day. Records submitted late will be processed and paid the next payment cycle. Emergency temporary closures, that you as a provider agree that all requests for compensation for a temporary closure beyond the provider's control will be handled in accordance with in Florida statute and rule. Know that if there's things that happen, such as hurricanes, that will be handled through the state, and they will let everybody know how payment would be handled in a situation such as that. But you are required for any closures to report that to the coalition. Any. Disallowed costs. Provider agrees to return to coalition any funds received as a result of error or overpayment or disallowed costs. Okay, under section 61, 62, and 63 for reconciliation, Head Start agency, and Title 20 schools. I will allow you all to read up on that information in your contracts. We talk about financial consequences. So financial consequences within here can occur for non-compliance. So as a result of failing to provide the minimum level of services required, just know that the coalition can temporarily withhold reimbursement, disallowed all or part of services not in compliance with the terms of the contract, and or terminate the contract. Discrimination is prohibited under 65. Corrective action notice, again, all providers are accountable for completing their corrective action plans. We talk about probation. So depending upon where violations fall or a number of violations that occur, you can be put in place on probation for a period of up to 6 months and or termination. So termination for cause. So just know that the coalition has a right to terminate the contract for any cause at any time, which can include class 1 violations. It can include not staying up to date and completing your e-verify. That could be for not completing your quality improvement plan, or it could be for not completing your corrective action plans. In the event of emergency termination, the coalition will if the coalition has to immediately terminate the contract on emergency basis from notification of an entity such as Department of Children and Families or local licensing, or the United States Department of Defense or such, anything that through them that poses an immediate or serious danger to the health, safety, and welfare of children, again, we will terminate the contract on emergency basis by sending written notice to you. Termination of health and safety violations. Again, the coalition has a right to terminate the contract based on health and safety violations. Under section 70, termination and revocation of eligibility, that if the provider refuses to participate in a program assessment or refuses to participate in a quality improvement plan or fails to contract within the minimum threshold, which we said was a 4.0, just know that there can be termination of the contract for up to 5 years. Under section 71, the coalition may revoke a provider's eligibility to deliver the school readiness program for a period of up to 5 years for any health, safety, or welfare violations that can occur or for the concern or welfare of the children. Under section 72, termination of contract by the provider. So should you as a provider decide that you are going to terminate your contract, you must notify the coalition within 30 days advance notice. This helps prevent disruption or limited disruption to services to families. Okay, we're going to move on. You can read about legislative appropriation, eligible child care provider, and payment certificate fraud investigation. Under this, know that if a provider has given any cash or other consideration to a beneficiary in return for receiving a payment certificate, the coalition or its fiscal agent shall refer this matter to the Department of Financial Services for investigation for fraud. Again, suspension or termination of suspected fraud, that if you are found to be found guilty of fraud, then again, the coalition has the right to terminate based on fraud. And that would be fraud as far as being on the U.S. Department of Agricultural or any public assistance fraud, and as such in section C and D, and know that you can be out again for a period of 5 years from participating in the school readiness program. Due process procedures. severability of provider location, and litigation and venue. You can read up on those sections of the contract. Information change and notification. Under this section, you are required to provide the coalition within 14 days any change in contact or program information. You need to provide notice to the coalition for a request for an additional program assessment. Should you fall under the threshold, we do need to have notification of a temporary or emergency closure. You need to notify the coalition of that. Permanent business closure or a change in ownership 30 days in advance. Dismissal of children within your program within 14 calendar days prior to determination or within 5 calendar days after determination. Child care resource and referral. This is where you're providing your information to families. Make sure that that stays up to date. Unusual incident notification. Under this section, you agree to report any unusual incidents to the coalition by no later than the close of business on the next business day of the unusual incident, and to submit in a written report to the coalition within 3 business days from the date of the incident. And this shows some examples, which would be anything that involves the health and safety to the children under your care, which could be accusations of abuse, neglect. It could be injury to the child, or it could be child receiving professional medical attention. And these are just a few examples. Notification of disqualification for public assistance and fraud. So you must notify the coalition within 5 calendar days if you're placed on the United States Department of Agricultural disqualified list. And you must notify the coalition within 5 calendar days if an owner, officer, board of director thereof is convicted or found guilty or pleads guilty to fraud. Contract changes. So under this section, just know if there's any contract changes of either party designated for different representatives after the execution of the contract, you need to report that over to us, which would be the notice, name, and contact information within 10 calendar days of the change. For indemnification, when this section, when we talk about for being liable for and indemnify the coalition harmless, I'll let you read up on that. Okay, under section 86, only authorized amendments. Again, make sure that if you have any amendments that are out there, that they are completed in a timely manner, because it can have an impact on your payment and it can have an impact on your profiles and your contracts. Typically, when you see an amendment, Debbie Moore will typically reach out to you, let you know that an amendment has been initiated and that you do need to go in there and sign it. It's usually hidden. There's a little blue plus on the side of where your contract is. If you click on that blue plus, it'll open up and you'll see your amendment appear. Okay, we're moving on. And this is where you're going to sign your contracts. Should just know that whoever the authorized individual is going to sign under the section for the president, vice president, or secretary of officer. So you're going to click on the electronic signature and you are going to put your title in. On this section, it's not your name, it's your title, which will automatically imprint your name. And then your date, and then you will also submit that to the coalition. Okay. This is a great little exhibit here. It just tells you everything that is within your contract that gets pulled over from your profile. This talks about if you were on an improvement plan, what the expectations are for your improvement plan and what strategies you would be selecting. And due dates for all of those strategies. Okay. This tells you when deliverables are due. Lots of great stuff in here. I was still the improvement plan, the space left intentionally blank, contracted slots. We're not worrying about that. This is going to show on your contract what your reimbursement rates based on what your care levels served are going to be. You'll see the coalition's max reimbursement rate within your contract. And this is going to show you, which is really cool, your reimbursement rates and your care levels based off of your differential, if you're a gold seal, child assessment. This is a nice little reference here. Tells you part-time, full-time. This is where your holidays are going to be within your contract. So under here, I said not all of them will pull over. You'll see some of them appear. So you may have to cross-reference back at your profile and then move over the selected payable approved holidays. Because remember, there should be, if you selected 12, you should see 12 in here. If you don't see your 12 in here, then you're going to have to add some. All right. This is the Riley-Wilson Act. And this is where I told you the pertinent information that you really need to know this. Here's a quick reference for attendance submission. And anytime, if you need any of these documents, please feel free to reach out to the Early Learning Coalition for those documents. There is, and this can also be found on the Division of Early Learning, the approved school readiness curriculums and character developments. And those can change periodically. So it's a good idea to go on the Division of Early Learning's website just to see what they have on there. For inclusion and Warmline, Melinda Cantrell does a fabulous job reaching out, or if providers are reach out to her, providing information regarding screenings and inclusion. And this is the permission form, as we are talking about, for the vision and hearing screenings, making sure that these are fully completed and that you are replying to emails or calls from the health department. And this is just W-9 forms and things like that if you need those. Okay. We now are going to move on to the voluntary pre-kindergarten program. For those of you that are interested in VPK, please stay with us, and we're going to go through this portion of the contract as well. So just like for school readiness, you have a fabulous checklist that provides you pertinent information to what is required as a voluntary pre-kindergarten provider in order to offer services. So as we get to the VPK contract piece of it, we're going to go through the requirements of contracting. So just like the school readiness contract, the reason why that we're here today, the purpose is to inform you as the early childhood educator, AKA provider, about the important pieces of contracting with the state for providing voluntary pre-kindergarten services to families. So as a VPK provider, there's two different programs, right? There's a school year program, which is based off of 540 hours, and there is a summer VPK program that is based off of 300 hours. Know that as a 540-hour program, there are certain dates that you can start your program, and there are certain dates that you would need to end your program. Your program needs to be ended prior to that June 30th deadline, and even before that, so that if something should happen and you have to modify your calendar in any way, you have some wiggle room as far as days. Now, credentialing requirements are different for a school year program. So there are attachments that we can send as well. And you can also look at the Division of Early Learning website to decide which program or both best meet your needs, because again, there are different credentialing requirements for the lead instructors for a school year program as well as a summer program. And same thing with the 300 hours, that there is a certain criteria where you can start for your summer VPK program, and then it needs to be end prior to the children going back to school for the school year. Okay. Again, this contract is not transferable to any other assignable entity. You can't just give the contract to somebody else. That contract goes to you. So if there's a change in ownership or if you move, again, you need to give us at least 30 days notification. Provider type, again, you would fall into one of these categories based upon what type of provider you are for VPK. And under here as well, eligibility. So if you are found or convicted of fraud or you plead guilty to fraud, just know that you can be without providing services for VPK for a period of 5 years. And that would be same thing. You cannot be on the USDA disqualified list, which is the United States Department of Agricultural National Disqualified List. And you, to contract with us again, you have to successfully complete any outstanding corrective action plans that you could have during the duration of your contract. And E-Verify, even on this section, again, remember that E-Verify is important to maintain. And that, again, as we had mentioned under the SR, attests that you are not hiring any authorized aliens to work within your program. Under the eligibility that you, again, under this section, you'll have a composite score, and that composite score is a 4.0 or higher on the VPK side to be eligible to contract. Okay, and under section 8, required forms. So under this section, that the VPK qualifications and requirements will result in financial consequences referenced in the paragraphs in a corrective action if you're not using the correct forms that are prescribed by the Division of Early Learning. So again, it's important to correctly use and administer any of the forms that are required for contracting purposes. Child enrollment, that you agree to enroll eligible children for the VPK program with authorization from the coalition, which is provided in the form of a child care certificate of eligibility, also known as the COE. Okay, under item 10, that the VPK program that you agree to deliver the VPK program in accordance with what's applicable for statute rule in your contract. And make sure that you are completing your COEs and you're updating them into your document library every single year. So you're going to go and electronically complete them, as well as you're going to put fully completed name, date, classroom, all of the information needs to be fully completed on those COEs when they're uploaded into your document library. And label them as such so that when they need to be pulled for audit purposes, they can clearly be accessed each year. Okay. Moving on, assessment, that you agree to implement the coordinated screening and progress monitoring program and program assessment. So you will be required to administer assessment based on different components, which is STAR is the piece that's using, but there are requirements for that. And you would reach out to Ashley Schultz to make sure that you are completing the requirements for that. There is training that needs to be implemented for that. And there you should receive a training certificate for the director and for the lead. Reach out to Ashley Schultz because those do need to be uploaded, the training certificates, need to be uploaded in your document library in your coordinated screening and progress monitoring folder. Curriculum, agreeing to implement curriculum in accordance with what's in statute. Required information, that you agree that you will provide a copy of your attendance policy to the coalition before the contract execution. So within your provider, when you're doing your VPK application, there is a spot for your attendance policy that needs to be uploaded, and just know that once your contract is certified, it cannot be modified for the remainder of that program year. Fees are prohibited. Again, fees are prohibited from VPK for any parents. Parents are not responsible or held accountable for any fees for VPK. Under 17, instructor requirements, you agree that at all times that your VPK instructors and substitutes meet the eligibility requirements to be in the VPK program. Your class staffing, just know again, for a school year program, now your DCF classroom capacity, if it's under the ratio of VPK, then that's going to trump it. But if it's higher than that, just know for VPK purposes, the VPK ratio is 1 to 11, 2 to 20 for a school year program, and for a summer program, it is 1 to 12. And you cannot exceed what is approved for that. Substitute instructors, that make sure your substitute instructors meet the substitute instructor requirements, and there is a 30% rule for using substitutes within the classroom throughout the course of the program year. And know that the substitute instructors are used to replace the instructor when they are absent and off premises. Okay, forms of discipline. Again, make sure that you follow your policy, and that standards that you have in there are age appropriate for the children, and discipline is appropriate. Single statewide information system. Again, that is using your provider services portal, making sure that any of your VPK applications, your profile, all of that information is continuously kept up to date. The Riley-Wilson Act, I read that earlier. Please make sure that you're abiding again by what is set for the Riley-Wilson Act. VPK logo, there is things that you can and cannot do with the use of the VPK logo. So make sure that you are looking into that when you are advertising. This talks about deliverables, and this is a great little reference to look at when you're talking about instructional hours and what's due, VPK child attendance, what types of forms you'll be using, information notification, liability insurance. There is no lapse in liability. That is for SR or VPK. Any lapse in liability can be grounds for financial consequences and or termination of the contract. Implementation of the coordinated screening progress monitoring. You are required as a provider to administer that throughout the course of the year for different times of the year. Ashley Schultz can provide more information regarding that. Training and technical assistance, again, reaching out to your coaches. They're an asset to get more information, looking for emails. Make sure that you are periodically checking your emails and keeping those up to date. Check your spam. Child eligibility, again, the coalition will issue a child certificate of eligibility, which is the Dell VPK 02, which is what you get paid based off of that certificate. And again, making sure those certificates are up to date within your program, because that's based off of your payment. Monitoring, just know that all VPK providers are monitored throughout the course of the year, and that when we are coming in and monitoring, that you cannot, you have to allow physical access as well as record access to the records, such as your signing out sheets, or what is called your short forms and or your long forms, which are your parental choice certificates. So at the end of the month, you have your daily signing out sheets, and then you have a long form or a short form. And we'll talk a little bit about this. You can use either one. Most providers use a short form, and it's called a parental child certificate. And at the very end of that month, that last day of the child being in the program, or if it falls in the holiday, you can go to the beginning of next month, but you never pre-sign that you have, the parents don't pre-sign the children's names on there, because what that parental choice certificate does at the end of the month, it validates that the child was indeed attending VPK at the end of that month, each month. And that is a requirement as well. Record confidentiality, making sure records are kept confidential. Record maintenance, same thing, you have to maintain your records for a period of 5 years. Should you have to transfer your records back over to the coalition, just know that we need records all the way back from 5 years. And payment will be held if we do not receive those records. Notification of enrollment, you agree that you will not receive payment until you have entered a certificate of eligibility into your portal, and that the coalition has turned approved your enrollment of the child through the provider portal. And that you agree to document the daily attendance, monthly attendance, and annual cumulative attendance of each child in your VPK program. Okay, this is where I was talking about the parent attendance certification. So this is where you're going to verify each month your child's attendance prior to the month's certified child attendance. And that's where I talked about that parental choice certificate, that you can either use a VPK long form or a VPK short form. You can use either or. You don't have to use both. In addition to the sign in and out sheets, you're going to have one of these. And again, this at the end of each month attests that the child was in your VPK program. Direct deposit, making sure that your direct deposit and banking information is kept up to date. We talk about payment rate, that you understand that payment for each child may not exceed the amount of funding for one full-time equivalent full-time FTE student as established by Florida legislator. Differential payment, that you as a provider may receive a differential payment based on your performance designation with what is set in statute. There's advanced payment option. Some providers do, we don't have too many, do have advanced payment marked, but just know through advanced payment, hence the name advance, you do receive an advance, but there more than likely is a high probability that near the end you would be owing money back should you decide to do advance payment. Final payment, that you understand the coalition will not issue a final payment to the provider for the VPK program year until the provider certifies the annual cumulative attendance of each child enrolled in the VPK program in accordance with rules set forth from the division. Overpayment, that you agree that if the end of the year reconciliation of payment reveals that the provider received payment in excess of the amount owed to the provider. So that would be the reconciliation. Attendance documentation, you agree to submit monthly attendance certification. And again, make sure that when you are submitting your attendance, make sure you are double checking your dates for accuracy. We see that a lot lately, inaccuracies. So double check. Reimbursement summary, that you agree to review the reimbursement summary provided with the monthly reimbursement statement. If there's any discrepancies or overpayment or underpayment, that needs to be reported within 60 calendar days of transmission of the reimbursement summary. Under 46, closures, that you agree that compensation for a temporary closure will be handled in accordance with what's set forth in statute or rule. Under disallowed costs, that you agree to return the funds if you were overpaid. If a provider fails to return the funds that you were overpaid, that you will be subject to collection efforts and or fraud. These are Head Start and Title 20 schools. You can read up on that, the differences between those two. Performance metric. Provider understands that it is required to adhere to the accountability measures, what is set forth in statute. And so through that metric for moving forward, there's going to be a composite program assessment score that you'll receive, learning gains, and norm reference developmental learning outcomes resulting from the coordinated screening and progress monitoring program. So that's where your this is going to be moving forward, where they're going to base the accountability of your program. Providers on probation, that you understand that you are required to adhere, if you are a provider on probation, to what's set forth in Florida statute. Financial consequences, that if you fail to provide a minimal level of services, that we can withhold your reimbursement or terminate the contract. Discrimination is prohibited. Non-compliance of determination for a corrective action notice. So just know that if the coalition determines that a provider has failed to comply with the provisions of the VPK program and they haven't satisfactorily completed the requirements of a corrective action plan, that we can terminate the contract. Basis for termination of cause, that the coalition has the right to terminate a contract for cause at any time, which again, could be anything that threatens the health and welfare of children, things like class 1 violations, not completing your E-Verify, again, and failure to implement any of your corrective actions, or suspect of fraud. Notice of termination of cause. Through that, just know that that you can be out for a period of five years, again, for fraud. And under this section, that the coalition will send written notice of termination for cause to the provider, and such notice will be sent with proof of delivery at least 5 business days before the termination, unless there is an emergency termination. And that would be where the coalition must immediately terminate the contract based on emergency basis through DCF. And that's under 56. And that will be written notice to the provider within 24 hours. We talk about revocation of eligibility. Again, know that we can revoke a provider's eligibility to deliver a VPK program, and a school district can revoke a public school's eligibility as well. Okay, under provider, if the contract is terminated under the provisions of this paragraph, which is under 55 and 56, that both parties may not enter into another contract for VPK services for the remainder of that contract term of that contract. Okay, termination of contract by the provider. Again, if there is, if you decide you're going to sell or change in ownership, you need to provide at least 30 days notice to the coalition. And if you're found to be in non-compliance, know that you can be out for at least 2 years, but no more than 5 years. Okay, so we're going to go fraud. Again, if you're suspected of fraud, that you've committed fraud, then the contract will be terminated. Termination for fraud is for 5 years. USDA disqualified list is for 5 years. There is a due process, and you can follow the due process. And you can read about this on your own. Okay, information change and notification, same thing. You need to provide notice if there are class transfers of children within the same provider location within 14 calendar days. So that means that you can't just arbitrarily move children from one class to another. They are assigned, and those certificates are assigned to each individual class that the child is assigned in. So you can't be moving children, VPK children, around from class to class. You also need to provide notice to a coalition of any changes in information regarding your VPK 10, 11A, or 11B within 14 calendar days. Now just know that same thing with your VPK calendar revisions. You're only allowed 2 revisions unless there's an emergency as far as your calendar. That's your dates within each program year. That's not the instructors. We're talking about the dates, your calendar dates, once it's been certified. Resource and referral, making sure that your profile, again, and the information in it is kept up to date. Unusual incidents. Same thing, you agree to report any unusual incident to the coalition no later than the close of business on the next business day of the unusual incident, and to submit something in writing and report it to the coalition within 3 business days of the date of the incident. Okay. Notification of USDA. You must notify the coalition within 5 calendar days of being placed on the USDAA disqualified list or being found guilty of fraud. You can read on when the provider will be fully liable for and indemnify, defend, and hold harmless the coalition. You can read up on that. Only authorized amendments, again, same thing on the SR side. If there's, Debbie Moore will reach out to you if there's amendments that have been initiated. Know that, again, those can hold up your payment and it can have an impact on your profile, whether you have an outstanding amendment. So make sure you are efficiently completing any amendments that get initiated. The execution of your contract. So under this, same thing. When you get to the signature part of your contract, you're going to type your name under the signature piece. You're going to check on electronic signature. You're going to put your title in, not your name, your title. Your name will be imprinted once you put your title in, then you're going to date it and then submit it. Again, it's going to be your title in this section. All right. Here's the due process procedure. I'm going to show you a little bit down here so you can read up on that. This would be, again, here's some provisions about what the requirements are for a VPK director, because there are requirements for that as well. Liability insurance, again, maintaining workers' comp and liability insurance. That is also in your school readiness contract. Summer program. Here's submitting attendance. Not all providers, but some do follow district calendar as closures. You are not required. It's based off of 540 hours. However, some like to use the days that the district is closed. So there is a calendar that you can follow should you choose to use those. Again, that is not a requirement. VPK director requirements. There are requirements. VPK instructor requirements. There are requirements for leads. Your attestation of good moral character needs to be up to date. And this is the short form version that I was talking about for the parental choice certificate, AKA short form. All of the child's name, the information all up here needs to be fully completed. The month and year needs to be completed. Print name of parent. Under the signature, provider does not sign for the parent or guardian, or the date on there is also done by the parent, and that needs to be at the end of every month, not at the beginning, unless it falls on a holiday and the child's not there at the end, then you'll catch them when they come back the next month, but you'd never pre-sign these. Instructor requirements for a school year program. I'm going to look here. And these are instructor requirements for a VPK summer program. And you can see they are a little bit different. VPK logo usage, the do's and don'ts, direct deposit form, should you need one, W-9, just extra resources, and the E-Verify, should you be a new provider and you need a new one. And that concludes today's provider meeting. If you have any questions, you can reach out to myself, Karen Hallman, at the Early Learning Coalition of Polk County, and I can be reached at Karen, Karen HALLMAN at elcpolk.org. I can be reached at 863-577-2450, extension 307. Or if you have additional contracting question requirements, you can also reach out to Debbie Moore, and that is Deborah Moore at elcpolk.org. And you can reach her at extension, same phone number, 863-577-2450. 50 extension 221. Thank you and have a wonderful day, and welcome to School Readiness and VPK.